Hey, Zero listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
Look better.
That's very thoughtful of you.
I know, right?
I love that. One of the tools that I use with clients is past life regression. And that is where I go back to the past life and create healing for people by healing their past life trauma with hypnosis.
You can have a religion if you want, and you can integrate it into your clinical practice. And clients can be offered this kind of religious counseling, and clients can seek it, but you don't want to impose it, right? Now, I'm going to take a guess and say that, I mean, this isn't real therapy because it's a reality TV show, right? I mean, what is real therapy? But in a real therapeutic scenario with her and her religious, I'm saying religious because it's a supernatural belief, and that's okay. I've talked about this before. I believe that I have colleagues, friends. I've supervised Christian counselors. They were Christian counselors that advertised themselves as Christian counselors. They were licensed to practice in Washington, and they had clients that were Christians that would seek out Christian counseling. And the counseling wasn't focused on Christianity, but it had it infused at times. You know, what my impression was most of the sessions didn't seem to be Christian counseling at all. It just seemed like counseling. But anyway, occasionally there'd be Christianity infused. So, and there's a wide variety of what, you know, you can have another Christian counselor that might be very heavy-handed with their Christianity, even with clients that aren't looking for that sort of thing. Anyway, so I have supervised Christian counselors in their work. I've been overseeing them, in charge of their private practice, so to speak. Not in charge, but in charge of overseeing their private practice. It's a normal segment of our clinical field. So, like I said, there's potential problems in there. You know, there are Christian counselors that, for example, won't work with gay people because they're against gay people. But all the Christian counselors I've worked with in Seattle, they're not like that. I'm sure there are some. But anyway, point is that I don't have anything against any sort of supernatural belief being infused. You know, I have a friend, Rebecca, who actually will, on the podcast, will use tarot, for example, or tarot. I always get that wrong. I took French in high school, so I feel like I want to say tarot. I don't even know if that's the French pronunciation, but because it looks like a French word, right? It's just because it has the T at the end that you don't pronounce. It's been over 30 years since I took French. Anyway, point is that she uses tarot cards, I think that's how you pronounce it. And that's a supernatural belief system, a religious belief system, if you will, spiritual belief system, you know, whatever label you want to put to it. So that's why I'm calling this, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a supernatural belief like past lives and advertising yourself as such and infusing that into your practice, and maybe even offering to clients, would you like to talk about that? But you never impose it. There's probably a lot of clients that seek her out and say, I want to do that kind of work. And she described the ways that she does it is she will, and I guess we'll see it, is that she will channel or detect the past life or something, and will then, she says, by healing the traumas of this past life, then you heal in the moment, essentially. And yeah, you know, I could see it. You know, a similar thing that I do that's not supernatural, but is not based on hard, concrete evidence, is dream work. I have my own brand of dream work, you know, dream analysis, if you will, with clients that involves a collaborative exploration. You know, a client will come to me and say, oh, you know, I want to work on one of my dreams I had last night. And they describe what they remember. And I just ask a lot of questions. You know, when you were there, what did you feel? Because people tend to just give me the cold facts of the dream, if you will. You know, like I was in a car and for some reason my mom was there, even though she passed away 3 years ago. And we were on this road that I remember driving on as a kid, and there was this mountain that, you know, was exploding with lava, and then we hit a tree. So it's all the facts, like you were watching a movie or something. But what I will do, I say, okay, so when you saw your mom, what did you feel? Were you surprised, or Did it just seem natural that she was there? And then I explore that. And then when you saw the mountain, what did you feel? When you're driving the car, then I would ask, okay, well, were you, when you were driving and your mom's in the passenger seat, where were you going? And the client might say, well, I don't know. Then I might say, well, what was your impression? Were you just on like a vacation, or were you on a mission, or were you running away from something? Like, what do you think was happening? And sometimes clients will say, I don't know, we were in a car. But often it'll provoke a memory within the dream, and they'll say, yeah, it was sort of like a vacation, but we were also kind of on a mission to get somewhere. And I guess I remember kind of feeling like me and my mom were fighting about something, but I don't know what. So there's elaboration, there's emotion. Then I also asked the client, so what sort of car was it? And they might say, I don't know, I don't really remember. But they might say, well, it was a sedan, like from the 70s. And then I'd say, okay, so when you think about sedans of the 70s of that sort, what kind of vibe do you feel? What kind of associations do you have with that? And that might go nowhere, but it might go somewhere. Like they say, well, I think of my childhood. I think of when times were simpler for me. I think of the United States when things were more innocent, and you could have these giant cars that used all this gasoline, and people didn't really know about climate change yet. And I'd say, oh, okay, that's interesting. So when you think about that car, that's what that symbolizes to you. And so if they said all those things, I'd say, well, if you kind of put that into one phrase, what would you say? And they might say, well, I guess old 70s sedans, they symbolize to me a simpler, more innocent, happier time. And I say and I might say, kind of like your childhood. Do you see your childhood that way? And they might say, yeah, I guess I do. And then I would ask a bunch of questions about the lava and the mountain and da-da-da. What was your mom wearing? How old was she? What are your associations with lava? What are your associations with your mom? Have you been thinking about your mom? There's a lot of conversations, even though the dream that they gave me at first was very short. They just said, I'm driving, my mom, car, lava, hit a tree. Pretty simple, right? But when you start exploring it, there's a lot to get into. And also so if you notice, I'm never saying, oh, a car means this, or your mom means this, or lava means this, or a tree means this, because there's no evidence that is a thing. All those books that say if you dream about flying, it means you want freedom, all these kinds of things. It might mean those things, but probably not. Everyone has different associations, and we dream for different reasons. So my style is collaborative and living in their world, and based on their symbols and based on their associations. And I'm just asking them questions, right? Now, I might offer something, like the time in my role play, when I said just, so kind of like maybe like your childhood, it's a question. And I don't want to be heavy-handed about that, because I don't want to insert anything, because there's a risk of that. I could say, oh, that kind of sounds like childhood, right? And it wasn't childhood to them, but because they're influenceable, I push them in that direction, and they're like, yeah, like a childhood. And then I start messing with their unconscious, which kind of negates the whole purpose of the exercise. We're trying to get to know them. We're trying to help them to express themselves. Anyway, so we explore all that. For some people, most of the time, there's some sort of realization around the dream, like, oh, you know what? I guess when I think about it, I've been kind of going through this, because it often will reflect our waking life and our concerns and our emotions and experiences, or what we're missing, a wish fulfillment that we want to have. The dream gives us something that we wish for in our if we wish to hang out with mom and go on a vacation, our dream might give that to us as a way of wish fulfillment. Anyway, there's a lot of different theories as to the types of dreams we have, but I never offer that up. I might propose it as a possibility in a very light way, very tentative way, but I only do that if I think the client will come up with that themselves. And so that can be very interesting and enriching and self-awareness building for a client to do that. But another thing that can happen is that you can also heal from things. There can be corrective experiences where, so say this dream with their mom, and I say, okay, you crashed the car. What happened? Do you feel like you're a disappointment? Do you feel like you made a mistake in the past? Do you feel like you killed your mom? I might ask a provocative question like that, depending. And then say the client says, yeah, I feel like I let my mom down or something like that. And then I might say, okay, well, if you could rework the dream, what would you do? And let's say they say, well, I just wouldn't have hit the tree. And if the client is up for it, I might actually really have them get into it, maybe close their eyes. And I might say, okay, so I really want you to be in that driver's seat. You're in that car, because you're working with their symbols. You're working with their unconscious. And so they're in the car, they're in that old 70s car that has those associations: mom, sunny day, lava, tree. I want you to actually not hit the tree. I want you to visualize not doing that. And how does that feel? Who knows? You just never know what's going to happen with people. But they might say something like, it feels strange, but it feels great that I actually kept my mom safe, or something. And then it could be a lot of emotion there, a lot of healing there. Now, I'm equating it with past life regression because there's no evidence that any of this is quote unquote real. Because with people's dreams, we only remember bits and pieces of our dreams. And it's hard to even test whether or not that's even true, because we can only ask people what their dreams are after they wake up. We're starting to get technology to be able, with AI and brain scanning. We're far from the point where we can do this effectively like in sci-fi movies, but where we can actually take guesses as to what people are visualizing. But we certainly don't know what people are feeling and thinking. But anyway, so the point is that they wake up from the dream, they report it, or they think about it. It might be, a few days later when they tell me about the dream, and we understand through research that there's a lot of reasons why people dream. Some of it maybe it has to do with working something out emotionally, but there's also evidence that it's just kind of random noise that happens in your brain. There's no way to know if any of that. It's hard to test the hypothesis, right? If you in science, if you have like two species of tree and you're trying to figure out which one is stronger, well, you get a sampling of each of the trees, and then you do tests to see which one is stronger than the other in terms of the wood, right? That's science, but it's hard to do that with dreams. It's hard to do that with a lot of psychological concepts. Anyway, so the entire exercise and all the premises that I'm basing my version of dream work on, you could argue is outside of science for a variety of reasons that I don't want to get into all the other reasons right now. It's almost dinner time. So maybe I'm a little hangry. I'm not hangry, but they just have a different word, because anger, a little, like punchy is another word that I'll use sometimes, where your brain starts to go like hunchy. Anyway, so with dream work, I have to, and I am very happy to admit that there's not a ton of evidence that the foundation of it is scientifically accurate or real, or so we could be actually just kind of in a different supernatural zone in a sense, and I'm okay with that, and I even frame it like that to my clients. And when I teach this to my students, I say all this as well. I say, there's a possibility that in 50 years they will completely debunk everything I'm saying right now, but that doesn't matter so much as if me and the client agree that by discussing this topic of their memory of a dream, which might be altering and changing over time as they're telling me the dream, I have found it to be a very rich way for people to explore their emotions and their thoughts and their experiences. I think for some people, it gives them an excuse to admit things about themselves. Like if someone comes to therapy, they might not even be able to admit to themselves that they miss their mom. But if they have a dream about their mom, then it opens the door to a possibility of just like, well, maybe it's okay for me to admit that I do miss my mom, or something like that. So there's a lot of benefit to playing in that space with the client. And with past life regression, it could be the same thing, where there's nothing saying that any of this is demonstratable by observational science, that you can say definitively that these discussions about past lives are actually talking about past lives. But if the client agrees that it's true, and you at least propose that it's possible, then, like with Ed, perhaps he identify, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's like, okay, I had a past life as Napoleon. I don't know why that came to mind, but okay, well, what happened to Napoleon, and what trauma did Napoleon go through, or say a soldier in the French Revolution or something? What do you think you went through, the losses you went through or something? And how do you feel about that? And what are you dealing with right now that is trying to protect yourself from that past trauma? This model is kind of weird, because you don't have to go to a past life to find traumas that. Now, I don't know what sort of style she's going to do, but it's possible that what she's going to do right now will actually be potentially really quite powerful, even though it's based on a supernatural belief. But the risk is that you have a client that doesn't want to do this kind of stuff, or someone that's coming on the show who doesn't believe in past lives and doesn't want to talk about that. It might even be against their religion. There's some people where you have those kinds of conversations, and they will perceive you as a witch, as a devil, and to participate with this devil is to actually risk going to hell. So you don't want to just impose this on people. But I don't know, that's just my long-winded. I think I'm trying to prepare myself to watch this scene. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So, make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
To the past life and create healing for people by healing their past life trauma with hypnosis. And this
And then hypnosis is a whole other topic that I don't use hypnosis, but I have close colleagues of mine who do, and I've looked into it over the past 27 years as being a therapist. People have asked me to talk about it on the podcast, and I've talked a bit about it. IBLP, or not IBLP, that's the Duggar thing. I forget what the neurolinguistic NLP, neurolinguistic programming. There's a shred of science to the claims that are stated online about hypnosis and eye movement, but in my observation, 99% of the claims made by lay people and some clinicians is complete pseudoscience nonsense. So hypnosis is a thing, but it's not what the popular public, for example, the notion that you can hypnotize someone on stage and they will do whatever you want them to do and they won't remember it and the individual on stage has no power over that is ridiculous. I mean, just imagine if humans had that ability. This is what I always say. Imagine if hypnosis, like stage hypnosis, was real. And most clinicians don't ascribe to this sort of thing, but I just want to dispel it. But just imagine you would have legit super villains. Also, you might even have superheroes because you could find, I don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer or a serial killer, and you could hypnotize them to not be a serial killer. I mean, that's what it's proposing, which of course is ridiculous. We don't see that, thus it's not real. Most of these stage shows, the individuals, the participants, are participating in the activity. Just as a side note, I went to Magic Castle in LA, and it was this great time. There's all these magicians and in these small rooms, and really a magical night. And I got called up on stage, I think like a couple times. I must have like a face of just like, I'll work with you, because when I was on stage this one time, this guy was doing this trick, and basically, I can't remember exactly how the trick worked, but he had a number written on his hand, if I remember right, and only I could see it. He was like, "Well, what number is it?" And on his hand it said 2, and I had this split second of just like, I have total power over the finale of this magic show. I could tank this whole thing. I could say 4 and just ruin this guy's night. But I'm not a dick. And also, the entire audience does not want to see that. Everything is unless I'm a psychopath, I'm going to say 2. And I did, gleefully and quickly. And then I realized, oh, yeah, that probably a lot of these stage shows depend on the participant just not wanting to ruin lives. Plus, there's a lot of narcissistic people up there who want to perform. Anyway, so there's a lot I can say about that. That does not discount people's accounts of, they'll say, I didn't remember a thing. Memory is also something we have some choice about. Anyway, but clinically, hypnosis also has a wide variety of claims and uses. But generally speaking, the only empirically demonstrated usage of hypnosis for therapists with clients has to do with relaxation and emotional regulation, and maybe in isolated instances with memory recall. The way it's in the movies, it's like, I want you to go deeper. I want you to go deeper. And I want you to go into the womb, and what did it feel like? And, it's not likely. And the client can make stuff up, or they can believe that they remember. And we've run tests on this too. It's not just me making this stuff up. There's a lot of empirical tests that have been conducted over decades looking at, can these claims about hypnosis be demonstrated? And most of them can't, but some of them can, meaning, the relaxation, the different mental state that, think of hypnosis as just kind of a particular brand of relaxation. If you've ever done like a meditation exercise, guided meditation, it can, like I remember one of the first times I did a guided meditation was in middle school, and we were instructed to close our eyes, and we're doing the deep breathing, and we're aware of our feet and our hands. I think it was the first time I'd ever done something like that. And at the end of it, we open our eyes, and the instructor said, "So that's the end of class. You just did a guided meditation for 45 minutes. And all of us were like, 45 minutes? It felt like it was 5 minutes. Or at least that's my memory anyway. And so peers, we can enter into these different rhythms mentally. I was still totally conscious, but the noticing of the passage of time is different given our attention and the relaxation and the letting the mindfulness, not paying attention to impulses and or not holding on, or not struggling with what's coming in your mind, just trying to be blank, or whatever it was that we're doing. So hypnosis is very akin to that, and that's legit, and that can be helpful. So she uses hypnosis, but of course the bullshit that will be talked about is, I can hypnotize people into enacting their past lives, and I'm going to talk to Napoleon and do therapy on Napoleon. That's one of your that's a religious belief. It's a religious belief, and if everyone believes in it and everyone's asking for it, it's religion. As long as it's not harming anyone, then I'm all for it. Okay, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.